Hey all, Jason Levon, priest at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Welcome to another edition of Pause and Pray. There's a quote that floats around social media I've seen every once in a while, attributed to, I've come to learn, an internet poet known as Atticus. And the quote says, I've never met a strong person with an easy past. It's yet another way of reflecting a wisdom that comes to the world again and again, that the only way to find things like strength and growth is really paradoxically through acknowledging our very weakness and vulnerability. Brene Brown's another modern day writer who reflects beautifully and often on how we only come to find growth and beauty and connectivity through our shared sense of vulnerability. It's the same wisdom that Paul echoed many years ago in 2 Corinthians when he was able to boast of his weaknesses because he knew that his weakness was precisely what opened him up to God's grace, and it's why he could say, it's when I'm weak that I am truly strong. I even encounter the paradoxical beauty of that wisdom from my vantage point as a priest again and again, where so often I find this beautiful example of strength and growth in life coming out of the woundedness and weakness of people when they bring all that to me or to the church to sift through and walk with them through. And yet, in my honesty with you, no matter how many times I hear that wisdom, I resist it and push back against it, never wanting to lead with my weakness or my woundedness, but rather trying to cover that all up and go it alone. It's in the face of that, though, then that yet again I get hit with that same beautiful and holy wisdom, just like I did this morning when I read the readings for the daily office. Our second reading comes from chapter 16 of Acts of the Apostles, where Paul and Silas find themselves in a moment of weakness, imprisoned. They're praying and singing hymns, and after this mysterious experience of their chains being broken, they have this encounter with their jailer, who was intrigued by them and about how they came to found this life and peace in the midst of all of their struggle and weakness. And after engaging with them in a reflection on all of that, then something beautiful happens. The text says the jailer washed the wounds of Paul and Silas. They didn't negate their wounds or deny their wounds or try to toughen their way through them. Instead, before leaving prison, they offered their wounds to this jailer to wash them and tend to them. That's wisdom I need to hear again and again, and wisdom I dare say this broken and divided world needs to hear again and again. That instead of trying to put others down and find fault with others because of their weakness and their woundedness, to rather, or maybe we do that with ourselves, continue to beat ourselves up and find fault with ourselves because of our woundedness and weakness. But rather today, in the midst of that, we're invited to pause and pray. And instead of finding fault in each other for our wounds and our weakness, to rather pray for the grace to do some real holy listening to one another in our wounds and weakness. Because in listening to one another in our woundedness and weakness, we find ourselves helping each other carry the weight of that woundedness and weakness. Or maybe even pray for the grace to offer our wounds to others and to wash the wounds that are offered to us. Just like that jailer did so beautifully in today's second reading. Because that's the only way we find ourselves becoming, as the priest Henry Nouwen so beautifully said, wounded healers to one another, or holy wound washers, and stepping into that holy paradox yet again, that the only way real life and hope and healing can flow is when we find the grace to offer our wounds to one another. God's peace and blessings to you all.